Welcome to the Previously Rockhounding podcast, where we explore the world of rockhounding and lapidary from the ye olden days of the 1970s and 80s through the lens of vintage issues of Rock and Gem magazine.
This is episode 9. We're looking at Rock and Gem magazine from December 1976.
If you're a new listener here, the way this works is I read the issue, Sarah reads the issue, we don't discuss it at all, and then we come together here on the podcast and share our thoughts on it.
Yeah, there we go. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about how I read. Now, I would put myself as a mid-range reader as far as like speed. You know, I'm not the slowest, not the fastest. And before starting this podcast, I don't believe I have ever read a magazine. Now, I've gotten magazines and like, I would typically skim through it and find things that I thought were interesting and then read those things. But I don't believe I've ever before systematically read all the words in a magazine. Like all the ads, all the articles, all the columns. I can't think of a time before this podcast that I have ever done that. Have you ever done that?
Maybe, but not like page 1 to page 100, more like, oh, my favorite column, I'm going to read that first, and then I'm going to read this other part that I always like, this section, and then maybe I'll look at the other articles. I don't know if I've read everything, but I don't know. It's hard to remember.
I definitely have not read all of the ads. I feel like with advertisements, I'm almost like desensitized and trained to gloss over them and ignore it. I mean,
especially the text advertisements are pretty easy to not pay attention to.
Yeah, but just in today, 2022, it's really easy to gloss over all the ads you see on the internet, all the ads on Instagram and websites and wherever. Like we gloss over it and we never really pay direct attention to it. So this is kind of like something I'm not necessarily used to, and then I'm finding that it takes me a while.
Yeah, it is time consuming.
So
not just to read it, but we also take notes on things and kind of, I take enough notes that now when we're talking about it, I'll remember what the article was like, which isn't really much, but I'm not just like, oh, that was interesting, here's a little comment I have. I'm like, okay, here's the title, here's the ad.
In this issue of Rock and Gem, it was 109 pages, and I kind of felt like I read a short book almost and wrote a report, like a book report. That's a little bit what it's like. So it's interesting to just have the experience of being in my late 30s and kind of truly reading a magazine for the first time thoroughly 100%. Never done that. I don't think many people do that.
I don't know if magazines are meant to be read like that. I mean, I assume they don't think that people are sitting down and leafing page 1 to 100. Like, the assumption is you're picking out what's interesting to you. That's why they have field trip reports, how-tos that are simple, how-tos that are complex, profiles on people, deep dives into minerals. They have a wide variety of content because they're assuming you're not interested in all of it. You're not sitting down to read every page.
Have you ever read a newspaper?
Yeah.
All the way? All of it? Mm-hmm. How we're doing it with these mag? I've never done that. No. I've only I've yanked sections I liked, and done that. But I might try to read a full newspaper at some point in my life, all the words in the newspaper.
I mean,
not the Sunday Times. Oh, wait, is the Sunday Times what it used to be? I don't know. I remember 15 years ago it being really thick.
I don't know. I mean, definitely with magazines, reading every single article, no matter what, you get more of a feel for the authors and their writing styles or their reporting styles. Mm-hmm. Versus if you're just reading the things that interest you, you're probably still reading the same authors over and over, but I don't know.
Well, in this month of Rock and Gem, there was a couple of ads that I thought were interesting. for various reasons. So there's an ad from Adam's Lapidary and Gem Shop in Youngstown, Ohio. And it was kind of an unremarkable ad. There's like really not a whole lot that would typically stand out about it. But I recently found this website called Open Corporates, and it's a database of companies that have existed. And I looked up Adam's Lapidary and Gem Shop, and it started in 1976, which makes sense because we're reading an issue from 1976. How long do you think they were in business? Because I have the end of them.
When did the steel plant close in Youngstown? Is that what the industry was?
Yes.
Did it close in the 80s, 90s? I don't know.
So they actually closed in 2003. Oh. So they were around for 27 years, which I thought was kind of interesting. I will definitely be using this website in the future for looking up some of these things that we're seeing in these issues. I thought that was interesting just to be that's a long time, and right now we're at the beginning of their story.
Yeah, and that's a long time. I have been to Youngstown, Ohio, and I would think once the economy kind of tanked there, the rent got real cheap. So they're why? They'd be why close? I know I went there in 2007-ish, and there was people coming back and doing cool stuff because you could rent the entire building for dirt cheap, and they're just I do my art here. Mm-hmm. And so I guess if you have a business and you're well, rent is dirt cheap, why close? But then they closed. So
you only went there in 2007.
Yeah.
You didn't go there when Adam's Lapidary and Gem Shop.
No.
I don't even want to ask what you were doing in 1976. Nothing. She was doing nothing.
Yes.
So I just thought that was interesting to kind of have the end of their story a little bit.
That's a long time for a rock shop. I would think.
I was surprised by it. I wasn't expecting them to be around that long. So.
I saw some interesting products being advertised. Someone was advertising a genuine bear claw choker, which we talked about. They made a bear claw necklace. Is that what they mean? Literally the claw, the nails of the bear? And then there was someone else advertising, they were selling black bear claws, grizzly and lion claws also available, and bear teeth. And when you ordered them, the claws, you had to specify cleaned or unclean. What does that even mean?
You pay extra and there's toe meat connected to the claw still?
I don't know. It's gross. It was 85 cents extra for cleaning, so it wasn't a deep clean. I don't know.
I think they just throw them in acid.
I assume you can't sell a lion claw at this point in time.
I would hope that we need to make some notes, and in the future when we look at a modern rock and gem, be how many elephant tusks, lion claws, bear claws, teeth, fish scales are being sold?
Yes.
How many snuff bottles are being sold in a modern rock and gem?
There's also some other interesting products that you wouldn't see now. There was a gold nugget tie tack. So it was literally just a gold nugget as it comes out of the ground, and I guess they glue a thing on the back so it's your tie tack. I don't think you would see anybody wearing that.
No.
And there was a belt buckle where it was a screw-on buckle setting, so you could change out the cab in the buckle.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
I know, I thought that was smart. You'd be this doesn't match my outfit. Let me put this light color cab in. Let me put this cab in.
Usually with those types of things, it's a very standard. They'll be a 30 by 60 oval, and you can easily just buy replacements.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
I thought that was good.
Yeah, there was a ad from a company selling trade frames. And a trade frame it's a flat box, and the lid has a glass window in it so that you can have it at like a show, like you're a vendor, right? And you're putting your cabs and stuff, and we've seen some of these trade frames.
Just a case.
Yeah, but like generally
case.
little, like maybe like 8 inches by 12 inches, and it'll have like a layer of foam in it, you know? Well, this ad says, not everything will fit in this new trade frame, but if it won't fit in the F102 trade frame shown, it's bound to fit in one of our larger sizes. And what I thought was interesting about this ad, because it's pretty unremarkable, it has a really odd drawing of a woman in the ad where she's like, both puzzled and like has this like weird menacing look to her. I will put a photo of it up on the website and you can go check it out yourself. Currently rockhounding.com/podcast, and it will be under episode 9. It was just a very odd like artwork and styling of it. I'm like, that's not what I would choose.
Was she trying to put it in and she was like, it doesn't fit.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous.
I'm so confused.
I thought that was that was an interesting one. There was also more ads in here that had nothing to do with rocks than I've ever seen in any of the other issues that we have looked at. And maybe I'll just I'll go through them all together here. So there was an ad that just said, "Watch out for the other guy, drive defensively." Just being in the right isn't enough. Nearly half the drivers in fatal collisions are in the right. Drive defensively as if your life depends on it, and it does.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Wait, so like, what does this mean when a magazine starts to get a lot of ads that have nothing to do with the theme of the magazine? Is that like, is Rock and Gem going mainstream in 1976?
Well, and I didn't notice it in this issue, but in previous issues, when they've had those non-rock, they're like a public service type ad, they say like this ad space donated for like the public good, and it'll be something like a PSA. So I don't know if they just were like lacking in ads and they're like, we got some free space, or like the ad council was like, oh, this is a magazine, like let's contact them and see if they'll run our ads.
That's possible. There was another off-topic one, and it just said, a New York publisher is looking for manuscripts of all types. And then they like listed some of the types of things like fiction, nonfiction, whatever. Like,
yeah, we've seen that in past. I've seen that in past issues. I don't know if I mentioned it, but
it's a pretty small ad. It's pretty small.
It seems like the odds of getting someone who wants to publish a book who's reading Rock and Gem, like what a weird.
Maybe they're looking for people that want to publish about rocks.
But they didn't say that.
I know,
was
just everything.
Everything, fiction, nonfiction. You're like, wait, that's everything.
There was an ad. I guess I look at this as kind of an off-topic thing. I know you just kind of touched on like bear claws for sale. There was an ad for antlers, just selling antlers from deer and elk, and they were quite expensive. Very expensive. A 3-inch trimmed elk butt was $30. And for those that don't know what an elk butt is, it's not literally the butt of an elk. It is the knobby portion where an antler attaches to the elk's head.
So it implies the antler fell off, not...
Yeah, these are sheds. These are like antler sheds that like somebody found. So at $30, that's $154 in today's money.
I wonder how much you find that on eBay.
Yeah, not lower than $154. I didn't look on eBay, but like, I don't know, because now I can't imagine just the butt portion with like a little, I think what they're implying that you would use those for would be like a knife handle, because that's like the knobby portion that would be where like your pinky is, and then the blade portion would go, away from that. So like an elk handled knife is a thing, but I just thought the prices were incredible.
Seems like a lot.
I have one more off-topic ad, and there is an ad that just says, help fight MS.
Yeah.
Nothing else, not how we're going to fight it, not who to give money to, but just said, help.
It said help fight MS, the crippler of young people or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's it. Yes. I don't.
So is it
How?
like
I don't.
what was it like MS awareness? Like did people just not know what MS was and we're like, let's raise awareness and that's how we fight it? Is
Everybody knew what it was and how to fight it, so they didn't have to say how. They're just like, here's your reminder to give the MS organization some money.
I honestly don't know how. If you only told me, Jared, go fight MS, I'm like, I honestly wouldn't know what to do. Who do I give the money to? Like, say who I would give the money to, because I'm not literally doing research that would help. So short of that,
I don't know.
or giving money, if you want money, you should be like, this is donate money to blank society.
Yeah. I don't know. Similarly, there was an ad. It just said, people can stop it. Keep America beautiful. And I guess they meant littering, but it didn't say littering. It just said, people can stop it. Keep America beautiful. Like, what is that?
Airport expansion.
Yeah.
Railroad building.
Wildfires, strip malls, like.
I've not.
Walking on a muddy trail when you shouldn't be. Like,
Yeah.
There's just a billion things that could mean.
Use your imagination.
Maybe that's what they wanted. They're just like, whatever your idea of America being beautiful, you have control over it. Do your part.
Well, you know, this is a little off topic, but something that we've talked about in the past is there's not really like beautification efforts in cities, and just like generally speaking, I think like I remember growing up in the 80s, and is this kind of like part of that? I mean, there was like, it seems like there was a lot.
I would think so.
There was a lot more emphasis in the past on just keeping things nice. And we don't seem to, I think we've lost that a little bit. Maybe there needs to be some more ads like this where they're just like, do a thing to make something nicer.
Yeah. Still though, that's not effective. Like, when you just tell people like, make things nicer, people are like, okay. But if you're like, go outside, take a plastic bag, fill it with trash, and then put it in a trash can, they're like, oh, yeah, I can do that. We can do that next time we're out. Like, you gotta like, be clear and direct and concise.
Well, you know, this podcast here that we're doing is entirely free. We don't run any ads here or anything other than the website. if we did make some money off of this and run an ad for a company, I would then take that money and run an ad in Rock and Gem magazine that just says, do a thing to make something nice. I would do that. I would.
We're going to be like, why are you sending us a text-only ad? We don't know what to do with this.
Do a thing to make something nice. Yeah, they wouldn't know.
I assume. I mean, I can't think of. I don't know. Maybe some magazines have like the text ads at the end.
I mean, yeah, that's got to be like the cheapest of all the ads.
There was some ads for stone types that the names were just too out there, and you just can't. I couldn't find what they were referring to. One of them was Wisconsin picture jade. I googled it. Nothing came up. I don't know what that means.
I have no idea what a picture jade is.
Jade in Wisconsin. And
I don't believe Wisconsin's known for its jade products. I mean,
I assume it's not. There's also something called, they were like, there's a whole blurb, but I only wrote down the name, called Stellarite. And then there's something you could make a cab out of, and they're like, it's people on the market are loving Stellarite. And there is a zeolite called Stellarite, but this was not that.
They were definitely not talking about that. Yeah, I mean, that just sounds like a trade name. You know, which it's a shame. It's like, trade names are so difficult to track down decades later. I mean, yeah, some of them stick around, But like so many of them that we're finding, we're just like, these are obsolete now. Like who knows what the actual product was?
Yeah, I don't know. Would it have been better to be like colorful jasper? Everyone's loving this colorful jasper on the market, versus being like stellarite.
I think attaching it to a locality is the best.
Yeah,
you know?
if that locality is like Indonesia,
Yeah.
it's a little different than like Oahe picture jasper. Like, okay.
Yeah, that is very true. That does make it more difficult. I don't know. I mean, I think in today, if you were to come up with a trade name today, in 30, 40, 50 years, it'll be much easier to try to track down.
Yeah.
You know, in 50 years, somebody's going to be able to type Uperlite into the hologram internet and VR see a Uperlite.
Yes.
That's virtual reality.
Oh. What's the C?
What?
VRC?
No, VR. I said VR. They'll be able to
see
it.
it.
They'll be able to visually see it in virtual reality holograms. Whereas we don't have that capability here.
Pre-internet presence.
Mm-hmm.
And you're out of luck.
Be able to take your flying car out to Michigan, find a Uperlite.
Yes. There's one other ad, my last one. I couldn't tell what the catch was. They're just like, write to us for your choice of a free item at 8x10 millimeter oval faceted garnet, a 5x7 oval fireable cab, a finish ring, or 2 gem books. Your choice for free. And it wasn't even like, also we'll send you our catalog, shipping and handling. It was just like, send us a self-addressed envelope.
I wonder what the scam is there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
mean, 5x7 millimeter is pretty small, isn't it?
Yeah. They send you a bill.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, why would...
I have no idea what the angle is there.
I've never seen it. A lot of stuff is like, oh, you want our catalog? Send 50 cents. Like,
Yeah.
It's not even a catalog's not even free, let alone... I guess there was that one that said you get a free quartz crystal with the catalog.
I should look up what the postage was in 1976. I have no idea what even a stamp cost to like mail a little letter of
It must have been enough because everyone was like, send a self-addressed envelope. Self-addressed stamped envelope.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll do that. I'll look that up. I wonder what the postage is for some of these things. You're doing it right now.
I'll do it right now.
Do you have any other ads that you want to talk about? So the columns. The glory hole, which is the editor's column. We skipped ahead a good little chunk of 1976 here because we just don't have some of the issues, and we missed most of the summer. But in this glory hole column, the editor talks of his search for a mine called Deja Vu, which he has yet to locate.
Wasn't that the one? Was that the one with the picture where he was like, "Here's a hint"?
Yeah.
So he did locate it, but he didn't tell you where it was.
That was a hint to the area that he's looking. I don't think he found the actual mine. So we don't. That's just something that he's doing and mentioned in his column. He also touched on the publishing of show dates and that they actually need the pertinent and correct information, which is something that we still deal with today, where people have rock shows. They put in all this effort, all this energy into organizing a club show, whatever, and they can't even put out like the correct address or an address. They're just like the fairgrounds. And they just expect people to just like know. So it's kind of funny that in 1976, I don't know. I have this kind of preconceived notion that people on the internet nowadays are idiots, and it wasn't always like this. But as we go through this, I'm kind of like, oh no, everybody sucked at conveying information. That's not a time period thing or a decade, whatever thing. It's just. No, they just were awful.
Yeah, accurate, I think.
So that was the thing where he's like, okay, if we're publishing these show dates, you have to give us the correct information, everybody.
I mean, it's not the first time either, but previously he's been like, we need it. Like, look, we print or we write the articles 4 months in advance, so like you need to send us your show dates at least 3 months in advance. Like, yeah.
He also mentioned physical fitness in this.
Yeah, he said physical fitness, which every rockhound should try to work on, as to be able to hound better and longer, which isn't anything I've ever heard anyone say nowadays.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But also, I feel like even from the field trip reports in the magazine, it seemed like people did a lot more walking than we do now. I mean, we have more capable cars are more common, and you're not, like, later on we'll get to an article where they're like hauling an RV in their 2-wheel drive vehicle, and they're like, I don't know if we should go down this hill, and then they do, but then they have to walk out a bunch anyway. Versus sometimes we walk out, but generally we can get pretty close in a vehicle.
The number of logging roads it's like, if you were to look at a graph from the 70s till today, it's like pretty much a vertical line. Like, there has been so much more logging done, and they that's great access. I mean,
still, it's a good sentiment to work on your physical fitness. It does make even the short walks easier, or the digging or the hauling of things.
Also with your dog. I know of some people that go rock hounding with their dogs, and their dogs are nowhere near as capable or fit as the person. If you're going to be dragging your dog along, maybe the dog should, I don't know, be height, weight proportionate at the very least. Not rounder than they are tall.
Yes.
So that's something to factor in as well. That's my little addition here. Doggy physical fitness.
Well, the thing that was interesting about him mentioning physical fitness is he recommended 2 books. And one was Exercise Your Way to Fitness and Heart Health, published by the Missoula Corn Oil Company.
Yes.
I was like, what? I can't, that's odd. I can't imagine today being like, oh, here's this fitness book published by Wonder Bread or something, and being like, no, that's not. And I looked it up and I couldn't find the exact book, but it was written by an exercise cardiologist. So I mean, it was.
But in the book, was he like recommending a daily? Make sure to have your daily dose of corn.
Probably. I mean, they're like, corn oil is healthier than the other oils. But that book was up. When I looked it up, all I could find was a mention in a New York Times article from the 70s recommending, like, they got some quotes from the author and they recommend the book. So I guess there was was there so few books on exercise that you're like, we need the Missoula corn oil book? Did companies just publish books back then?
I guess, yeah. I mean, what would that be like today? Like, I don't know. Would be Dr. Pepper's,
Beat diabetes.
Yeah, beat diabetes. And it's an expert because it's put out by, Dr. Pepper, the soda.
I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting, and I would definitely think twice about buying a book published by a food company when the book is about exercise. I mean, if you're like, 101 uses for corn oil, published by Missoula Corn Oil, I'd be like, yeah, okay. So there's probably good information there, but when you're like, Exercising Your Way to Fitness by Missoula Corn Oil, I'm like,
a guide on healthy lifestyles from Camel cigarettes.
Yeah.
Do you think you could explain the Frantic Fumbler this episode?
Well, this was December 1976, and I think we did December 1975, and the Frantic Fumbler was similar. I think we did November and December.
I think we did.
And like both columns, they're like, no, maybe it was like March, because he was writing it in December and he was like, I don't have time. I gotta finish my gifts. And this one seemed vaguely similar, where there was no content. It was just a poem, like Night Before Christmas, but rock and jewelry, lapidary related. I didn't read the whole thing because
He also misspelled poem.
I didn't notice.
Yeah. He misspelled poem in it.
He was like, what can I tell you, people in November, December doing your gifts? I can't give you any advice. Here's a poem.
Yeah, so it was just like, it wasn't even really poems. It was like vaguely Christmas-related sayings and stuff, and like modified or whatever for be like a little rock themed. I don't know. I was just like, what am I reading here? Yeah, it was a little, it was odd. The Shop Talk, which is our last column before we get into the articles here, they discussed polishing, basically. And the author said, I'm one of those lapidaries who believes a cabochon is not perfectly polished unless its surface is as smooth and unblemished as plate glass. And it shows no pits or scratches, even under 30 power magnification. And I gotta laugh at that a little bit, because literally nobody obtains that level of polish, because it is, how to say this? First off, I call into question whether or not he was actually looking at it under 30 power magnification, because there's a lot of jeweler's loops and things like that are sold, and they inflate their magnification power, right? So like a lot of 10 powered jeweler's loops are not actually 10 powered. A lot of 30 powered loops are not 30 power. And I know this because I have a microscope and I can look at things that are measurably under 30 power and 10 power and stuff. And I understand the differences here. So to say that like, oh, it's not actually polished unless it's perfect under 30 power, that is both like snooty and not probably accurate, because
it's like when you look at your face in one of those magnification mirrors and you're like, oh, look at your face, it's got all your pores and your blemishes, and you're like, well, you can't, it's irrelevant to your daily life.
So it's interesting, because when we get into the topic of polishing rocks, there's no point in polishing a rock beyond what the eyeball can see.
Right.
So what are you doing? Like, because all polishing is making progressively smaller scratches. Okay, and if you take something up to a 50,000 grit polish, there's no visual difference beyond 14,000 and 30,000, 50,000. If somebody says otherwise, I think a blind or a test would be easily prove my point here, that you can't tell the difference to the naked eye. So to say that, oh, it's not really polished, that like mentality, I'm just kind of like, it sits with me wrong, because that's like, it feels like a brain dead comment that I would read on Facebook and just be like, Facebook. But here we are in 1976 and I'm reading this brain dead comment.
Maybe the problem isn't Facebook, the problem isn't the internet, it's people.
Very valid point. Yeah, no, one of the things that we're doing with this kind of read through of these old issues of Rock and Gem is providing that kind of perspective, because a lot of this stuff I have definitely, me personally, just chalked it up to being like, stupid internet people, ugh. But here we are in 76, and I would have read this in 1976 if I was alive in 76, but I'm like, ugh, flawed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a good little reminder for myself, to just know that it's not the internet, it's people.
Yes.
So, did you have any thoughts on Shock Talk?
Nope.
You can just agree with me. That should be your thought.
You didn't have any. Did you have any comments on his polishing setup?
Yeah, okay, so he made this like kind of big deal out of it, and then it's just cerium oxide. All he's doing is a cerium oxide wheel. I'm like, that isn't exactly like magic secret worthy of being in this column, I guess.
That's a little basic for the Shock Talk column. I feel like normally he's like, here's a novel thing to do, or not maybe, last time it was like clothespins, so it's not like super, it was maybe something you haven't thought of.
It was holding up your DOP sticks with clothesline pins.
I don't know, but that was just more of a basic, like, I don't know, I guess that's not uncalled for. It's okay to have some basic stuff sometimes.
Yeah, it's just the whole mentality of being like, I know everything. Yeah, you just use cerium oxide. It's like, wow, that's great. On to the articles. There's a number of really good articles in this that I thought were interesting.
One of the first ones was noted. What was it? Noted on the front, which we were like, intriguing. Man-made picture rocks.
Yes. What do you think these were, audience?
We know what a picture rock is. It's like a jasper with some nice colors and blotches that look like a picture. So
yeah, usually a landscape scene is the thing. Like, I've seen some other picture jaspers where people have been like, it looks like a snowman or something like that. But
so
no.
I would think a man-made would be what you like glue rocks together and then you polish it and it's like a picture. That would be my idea of a man-made picture.
We're leaving out, maybe we're not leaving out, we haven't touched on this yet. So the title of the article is Make Your Own Picture Rocks. Now your pet rock can have a true personality.
So we're not talking about picture rock.
Yeah, we're talking about giving a true personality to your pet rock. So
I guess this was better than I thought, because if you're like, okay, giving personality to your pet rock, what are you like, you're drawing a face on it, like painting a face, like painting your rock like people do, people will do that now, but that's not what it was.
Well, it was one of those articles where it's kind of an ad in disguise, yes. Because they basically, the whole process that they're describing here is taking a photo, okay, like a photograph that you've printed, and using different chemicals to lift the ink off of that print and transfer it onto a cut rock. So, as an example, I would take a photo of Leica with my 35 millimeter camera and get that developed and then wait 4 days to go pick up those photos because it's the 70s. And after I return home from the photo hut, I take these chemicals and apply it to the photograph, and it would raise the ink off, and then you would press that onto the cut surface of the rock, and it would transfer that image of my dog to the rock. So that's kind of the idea here. So it's basically kind of an article talking about these transfer solutions.
I'm surprised this is the first mention of pet rocks we've had. I don't think, have they said pet rocks before?
I don't think they have.
I guess the whole pet rocks, it was started in 1975.
How much was the postage?
16 cents, I think it said.
It's gone up so much.
Actually, it said it was equal to 65 cents in today's dollars. So, isn't it like 60 cents?
I don't know. I buy all my stamps in the book, so I've
forever. They don't say that. But pet rocks, it said the fad only lasted 6 months, ending after a short increase in sales during the Christmas season of 1976. Discounted in 1975. They were discounted February 1976. Due to lower sales, they cost $4 each. The guy who made them became a millionaire. But, yes, I'm surprised this is the first mention, kind of late mention.
Yeah.
And it's like a year after the whole fad.
While we're on the topic of rocks and stamps, if you're listening to this in June 2022, the price of stamps are going up. Stock up. You can save they're going up like 2 cents.
Looks like it's 58 cents right now. So that's cheaper than.
And now we have forever stamps. I remember when stamps had the price on them, and then you could buy supplemental stamps. So it's like they go up 2 cents, and then you have to go buy some 2-cent stamps.
Yes.
That sucks.
Do they still sell stamps with the price on them?
No, they're all forever.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, anyways. Maybe, I don't know what the actual chemicals are. They didn't say, but I'm sure we could look that up, and then we could transfer a photo
I've seen people do that.
onto a rock.
No, usually, and it's like you print on photo paper. It's not a real photo, and then you transfer it onto some wood.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess
And I think it's not super complicated. There's not a lot of chemicals involved, but a photo paper is different from a photograph.
Yeah.
But also
you can print on transfer papers now, like iron transfer.
Yeah.
Think like you print a colored image on a piece of paper and you iron it onto a shirt, and then you have a low quality image transferred to a shirt.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought putting a photo transfer on a rock is an interesting idea, and they weren't using like a flat slab. They were using just a rough rock, so it was.
They had some flat stuff.
Oh.
I thought it was only.
I thought the example was just like a regular rock. So I don't know. It's an interesting idea. Certainly, it was what they do with the first article, where it's like somebody sent this thing to us. Let's tell you how to use it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's hardly deserves the first article of the magazine, but sure.
I guess,
okay.
yeah. There's a great field trip report in here to Crystal Hill, and I think maybe they shouldn't call it Crystal Hill because the crystals are the lesser part of the material that they go for. But it's Chalcedony roses are blooming in Nevada. That's the full title of this. So it was a Rockhounding field trip report from southern Nevada. They were about an hour south of Vegas. And I thought that this trip report was really good. It kind of embodied some of the more adventuresome aspects of rockhounding that sometimes get glossed over in other trip reports.
I thought it was interesting because it was there was there's a couple and another lady. I think the author was the third wheel lady, and they were traveling with a camper, and they were driving by somewhere, and the author was like, I remember something about this name of a place. I think there's stuff there. So they drive off to that place. They go out of their way, and then she's like, oh yeah, I remember. It's the rock, the Chalcedony roses are in the hills shaped like a dinosaur's back. And so they drive down this road, this sketchy road, and then they park their camper, and the two ladies take off for the day in search of the rock that they're looking for, and then they come back to the husband at the camper, which I guess you don't see women much in the articles other than Dixie Douglas. So that was nice to be two ladies going out and looking for rocks, and kind of get a sentiment of obviously your YouTube channel is primarily not women watching it, audience.
It's about 30%.
Yeah, so primarily not. But you'll see two ladies just wandering out into the desert. Let's see what we can find. And that was nice.
I thought it was interesting because it was kind of what I think a lot of people talk about doing but don't often do, because it was really just oh yeah, I remember this thing. Let's go track it down. Let's just drive off into the desert. Let's stop here. The road's kind of rough. And just meander down these washes for who knows how far and look for things.
I
Like,
feel like we get that in a number of the field trip reports in the magazine.
I guess what I mean is like today, like people talk about
Right.
doing it, but they don't really.
It sounds like that's more what people did in this era and what people are still imagining, but it's not really what you do.
Perhaps there's some bias here. Like it certainly is more appealing, right? Like what's more appealing? Hey, go to this very specific location and you pick up this.
Yeah.
And you can drive right up to it. Mm-hmm. Is that a good story? Or is it like, we had this lead, so we just drove off into the desert in this like evening, and then we just got out with our backpacks and we just tromped off into the desert, and we started breaking rocks, and we eventually found the deposit.
Right.
We loaded up our bags and hiked back, and it's like a nice like beginning, middle, and end to the story.
Yeah.
Versus we went to this exact location and it was here, and then we got it, and then we were done. So I get that maybe it makes for better content, like writing wise, but I think that might also not be the majority of people's experiences.
Yeah.
So
they did give directions in this one to go to it, so it was a good like story, adventure story, but also practical, and they tell you how to go there yourself.
There was no photos of the material.
Wasn't there?
Well, it was like
black and white.
It was black and white and kind of far off.
Yeah.
So I tried to look up the material and figure out what it was, because it's called Crystal Hill.
Yeah, I didn't really know what the material was.
So in Arizona, Saddle Mountain has fire agate, and people always like talk about the red stuff, the red fire agate down there. But like there's just like the white chalcedony that's like swirly, okay? And I think they're finding agate or chalcedony that looks like that has druzy quartz on it. And that's the kind of like, if you can envision that in your head, like something, I don't know, sub 1 inch around, like swirly banded chalcedony with some druzy on it. That's the material. I wish they didn't even really just do a very good job of describing it. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of just a good little jaunt out into the desert.
I believe the next article was how to make a concho belt, which on the cover they say how to make a Navajo concho belt, and it's like half like a little description about this guy who is Navajo, but he works at a jeweler's shop in Utah, and he makes stuff, and they ask him to make something simple, so he's like, okay, I guess we'll make this concho belt.
I would say,
and then there's like a step-by-step.
I would say that you definitely would not see this article today. I think in many circles, this would be considered a controversial article.
Yeah, I mean, they're like played up the guy who's like, it was like, also there's a big section in the article about like, this was the article where they talked about the Navajos and like took them away from their land, and we tried to put them somewhere else, and they didn't thrive there, and they tried to go somewhere else, and or they tried to go back. And this guy who worked in Utah, he just has that inner Navajo yearning for the desert.
So there's like, man, we don't generally address controversial things on this show, but there's kind of two parties in this. There's those who think that the Native American jewelry is theirs and should only be made by them, and you shouldn't basically rip off their style. And this is a step-by-step guide on how to rip off their style.
I mean, yeah, obviously it was a different time. There's so many ads for like Indian jewelry and turquoise stuff and like Indian made and even artifacts, like you really don't. That's definitely fallen out of favor.
So yeah, I mean, you have, and then it's also a problem because when you go to places and you have Native American made jewelry in their traditional styles that they are personally selling, it is then some people look at the wearing of that as not something you should do if you're not from that tribe. So then in turn, people don't buy it because what are you just going to buy it and throw it in a drawer?
Yeah.
So it's kind of not helpful to them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing that really is quite the difference in 2022 versus 1976. So
I wouldn't see anyone making this contra belt just because it's not very fashionable.
Yeah.
At this point in time.
Well, that's the case with almost all the jewelry things that we've read about.
You haven't cycled back to mid-70s fashion. I mean, I'm like cycling back right now to like early 2000s. Are we done? Are we not going to cycle back that far? Or,
I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, at some point you don't cycle back anymore. We're not cycling back to the 40s.
I would like some 1890s fashion to come back in because that's more suited to me.
Maybe you just have to start it. Just wear the fashion you want to be on trend. One thing about this article that annoyed me, which is made reading this magazine hard, is how many pages they spread it out to.
I know.
Like, it's because they have more ads than content. And I know I talked about this last time where it's like there's 3 columns per page generally, like of ads or text, and there'll be like 1 column of text and 2 columns of ads. So this article started on page 22. It went 22, 23, 24, and then there's like a full page ad and went to page 26, 27, 28. And then there was like, I think I had like another article, like the Craftsman of the Month on page 29. I'm like, why? And then it went page 31, or 30, 31, and then it skipped to page 86, and then it skipped to page 89.
The layout of these is not modern. I know
they do that in magazines now, well, like, they'll end an article. If it's just like a half column ending, they'll put that at the end so it is more clean. But I don't think magazines do this where it's like 4 pages of content spread out on 10 pages. Like,
yeah,
it makes it hard to read.
It does.
And then I have to save my plate. And since we're reading start to finish, I have to like put a marker on page 28 because I have to go back there to continue reading, but I'm on page 89, and then I get towards the end, and I'm like, wait, have I read this? What article? Like,
well, we read this differently because I read all the ads, and then I read all the columns, and then I systematically read all the articles, and that's kind of like my style with it. So I still find it annoying, but I don't know.
It's just spread, and especially when it's like a step-by-step picture following this numbered pictures, like you gotta put them together.
There was another field trip called Gold Rush Wood, and I thought it was mild. I will say it was a mildly interesting field trip report for me. So they're out. It's like a couple and some friends, and it's an area kind of that they've been to many, many times looking for the source of this opalized wood.
Where was this? Was it California?
Northern California, the Chalk Bluffs, and they kind of speculated a little bit about like the source, and the author's kind of conclusion is that there isn't a source, and that's coming down from, well, not a source in the traditional sense, because there was a lot of hydraulic monitor mining. So that, yes, for gold. So monitors were basically just like giant hoses. So they would have sometimes, like a 12-inch diameter hose, like a massive hose, huge pumps, and they would just blast the side of a mountain with water and wash everything down, and all the rock and the dirt and everything, and they would collect it all up and sluice it for gold. And he speculates that the petrified wood that they're now going for was hydraulically mined out. So that's kind of one thing that they speculated on in this. So they started digging, and it's like, oh, we've been digging for like 45 minutes and we haven't found anything. He felt bad because he's been talking up this location to his friends, and then eventually one of his friends found the edge of a piece of wood. And this is the part that I have a problem with. So this article has a decent number of photos of some of the petrified wood that they've been finding.
It looked very wood-like.
Yeah, it looked like it had great cellular replacement for being opalized wood. And they even said that they had found some gold over the years because they've been coming here for a number of years. So they started digging, they hit a little piece of petrified wood, and then they spent the next 2 days digging out a 12-foot log.
It's a 3 by 12 foot, so like a big log.
A giant log. And there's no photos of this. There's no photos of the giant log. There's photos of little tiny pieces, and they even said in the article that they took photos of it. Where are the photos? Like,
they also said they left it.
Yeah.
They spent 2 days digging it out, and then they just left it. I mean, was it too heavy? Maybe.
I mean, at that size, it would be definitely too heavy. But I would also say that if it was complete, that would be extremely rare. Generally, when there are full logs discovered, like it's been like broken. And like you have like a section of rounds almost.
Yeah, it does sound a little bit like a tall tale where they're like, we spent 2 days. We spent all of our time digging out this giant log, and then we took pictures, but we're not going to show you. And also we just left it. So, yep.
Pixar didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Give you directions to go there if you wanted to. I assume at this point the log is no longer there.
I would assume as well.
Hauled it out.
That was. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't. If we spent 2 days digging out something, I mean, at some point, if you're like digging and you're like, okay, now we got 4 feet uncovered, it'd be like, okay, wait, like, where are we going with this? Do we want to spend 2 days digging out something too big to take with us? Just like try to smash a piece off? Like, would you rather have a 12-foot long log that's sitting there for somebody else who has better equipment to come get? Or would you rather break the log into a manageable piece that you can bring home?
I need a low boy and a semi and a crane.
You don't have those, so your options are...
No, I would not spend 2 days of my life digging out something too big for me to move. What's the point there? You just want to like see it and be like, cool. You like drive off.
Because somebody else is going to see it and have access to equipment to get it, and then they're going to bring it home, and all your work goes to someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of taking giant things anyways.
It would be cool to have a 12-foot log.
Yeah, I guess. There was a jewelry article, how to make an overlay locking ring, which I thought was, how to describe it. So imagine like, I don't know, how would you describe this ring? So it's kind of like
it's like if you took the ring and the top of the ring was like Tetris piece that you like rounded around, and the other half of the ring was the other Tetris piece that fits in.
That's a good way of putting it, with the Tetris.
Because they cut it out of the same piece.
Yeah, so it's like a flat piece of silver, and they cut kind of like a zigzag squared off design, and then rolled them into ring shapes so they could kind of like interlock. I mean, it's a neat idea, but it seems like a very uncomfortable ring. to wear. Like,
Yeah.
you have like the points that like when you would on the inside that would like jab into your finger.
Yeah.
I don't.
I think they're trying to make like a beginner friendly, maybe.
Yeah.
Something you could copy.
It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and girls had like heart charm bracelets or like pendants where it's like it's broken and you could give half to somebody else and you're like says something on it, and
yeah, that's kind of what it was.
It was a little. That's what it reminded me of.
I thought it was interesting that the person making the ring was a university-trained jeweler with a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from University of Colorado. I don't think you get Bachelor's of Fine Arts in jewelry making, at least not from University of Colorado. I looked it up and they had like a drawing, like illustrating tract for their Bachelor's of Fine Arts and a ceramics tract. They didn't have anything that would make sense for jewelry. I mean, I don't really see that as like, oh, I make jewelry, I'm a university educated jeweler. You see that? And most people just kind of are like, maybe you have an art background, but
I don't know if we should have art-based college programs.
I mean,
at least
there's a lot of like studio time. So yeah, I don't know. Is getting a bachelor's degree the best way to develop your practice as an artist? Because yeah, it's a lot of like, at least the current University of Colorado Bachelor's of Fine Arts is a lot of studio time where you're just like making things, and I assume you're like doing like getting feedback from others and getting feedback from professionals in the field or your professors who are like, oh, try this thing, do this thing. I don't know if that a bachelor's degree is the appropriate thing to get from that, but I don't think we're doing that so much anymore. At least for jewelry.
With the internet, you can learn anything.
Yeah, but you can't get that like feedback from a trusted mentor. And
with the internet, you can find a trusted mentor.
You can't get that drive to practice for like 15 hours a week and be required to like go in the studio, have access to all the like equipment that they might have in the studio. So
that is true. I know somebody that makes high-end jewelry, and they estimated the price of their kind of like jewelry shop setup is like $50,000 in equipment.
Yeah.
So
you're just learning and you're not really sure you want to get there.
I think though there's
$50,000 in college degrees, less than $50,000.
That is true, but there's also a process that you go through, and it's oftentimes people see the end product and not the journey.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's something to be said about the grind of it, you know? I mean, I can easily speak to my own experience in making videos on YouTube, where my very first videos were with a GoPro session that we found at the beach. I threw in a box because I couldn't find the person to return it to, and then years later broke it out and started making YouTube videos. And now that's built up to like high-end video equipment.
Right.
So like there's a journey that takes years and years. That guy did not go and spend $50,000. Like he didn't like go swipe his credit card and be like, done.
Yeah, clearly.
You know, like it's
but I think that
there's a big learning process which can't be really replicated. I mean, does it benefit a person to go into a shop with $100,000 worth of equipment and learn on that, knowing that once you're away from that, you can't replicate it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how else would someone who wants to pursue art have the time and set aside for them to practice their art? I mean,
you starve.
Going to school full time is the time when you have that time set aside for you, and you can theoretically get loans to pay your living expenses so you don't have to work. And how else are you going to do that as a novice artist?
You voluntarily live a poverty-stricken lifestyle. You eat
How do you afford your equipment then?
baking. I don't know. I didn't I didn't get that far in the process. There is another. The next article is another jewelry article, and it's how to make a 60-minute necklace. And I guess this is technically a necklace. It's not.
It's a thing that you attach to a chain and wear around your neck, which makes it a necklace.
Technically, that is true, but I don't think it's what most people think of it when I say, like, think of a necklace. This is not the thing that pops into your mind, because it's basically a wind chime hanging around your neck. They take a thick gauged piece of wire, kind of curl it into this like flat pattern, hammer it flat, solder it together so it's like a swirly thing, and then hang stuff from it.
I thought it was good until they hung the beads. Like it was like they dangly like little beads.
It's like a wind chime.
Yeah, but very small. Yeah, if they hadn't done that step, I thought it was kind of neat looking because it's kind of like a swirly, like flat, but it's swirly. I was like, oh, this actually looks good. And then at the end, they put holes in it and hung stuff from it, and I was like, oh, never mind.
Yeah. I don't really know what to call this. It's definitely not an article, but it's not a column. It's kind of like just a blurb, and that was the petrified wood fireplace. And it's basically just like a page of text with some really cool photos.
And word color.
Yeah, and there will be photos up on the website, currently rockhounding.com/podcast under episode 9. And yeah, it was just kind of a neat like little showcasing of this amazing petrified wood wall with a built-in fireplace and a waterfall feature. And it's at a house here in Washington, Auburn, Washington. And I thought it's just kind of a neat like use of a bunch of stuff. I mean,
and it said it was like self-collected too.
Yeah,
it was very high quality as far as I could tell from the pictures.
It kind of has me thinking about more creative uses of bulk rock that is collected. Peterson's Rock Garden has been something that's been in the front of my mind, which is located in Central Oregon, and it's kind of like statues and fountains and all this stuff made of rock kind of mortared together. And there's such this emphasis on cutting and polishing and lapidary, and not just like what if I take a bunch of the cool rocks that I found and I make a bird bath, right? Like what if I just mortar them all together and I'm like, cool, this thing.
Yeah.
What about a planter box? Why don't we just like stack a bunch of rocks and grow strawberries in it? Why not that as a use, you know?
Yeah. I thought the fireplace was really neat looking and creative use for your very high quality rocks. And he didn't do it himself. He like hired somebody, and I think he like helped. Or
I don't know about the water feature.
Yeah, I don't know if you would want running.
It feels. If you've ever had like a fish tank, like they're a lot of work, and having a fountain in your house, it's like, it seems like it could get icky if you didn't really spend a lot of time with it, or you could just be like, this is what the dog drinks out of. It's like a dog fountain.
I tried to look it up, and I was like, I wonder if that still exists, or if anybody else has done any features on it, and I couldn't find it.
I tried to look it up as well.
My concern is people would be like, a waterfall, like that's kind of a dated thing, I think. And if someone didn't appreciate it, they might be like, cover it with something trendier, and because if you don't appreciate the rocks, I could see it looking dated and being like, oh yeah, look at that 70s fireplace, yeah, we'll knock it out at some point, you know. I could see, but
maybe.
I don't know, I couldn't find it. I looked a little. It's not that remarkable.
There's an article called Mexican Agate, and it's also the cover image of this, which it's a very lovely banded agate.
Colorful,
yeah. I felt like this article was very all over the place. I liked how it started. So it's kind of starts as this like pleasant article. Jim Mueller?
Sure.
Jim Mueller's collection, and you know I like reading things like this and hearing what it was like to collect rocks in the 1950s, driving into Mexico with like an old panel truck, like buying from mines, like finding this stuff, like
giving things to the locals so they'll save the best agates for you.
Yeah, like this kind of like memoir almost of like your experiences, you know? I mean, how cool is that in 1976 to read about somebody doing this in the 50s? Like, that's awesome. I really enjoy that. And then the article kind of just took this technical twist where they like kind of like theorized a little bit about how agates were formed. And then they got into some like history of agates, and they even like mentioned Pliny the Elder, which I don't know if you know who Pliny the Elder is. Like, that would be its own thing. But like,
and then like the localities and the agates that have been found there.
Yeah, it was just really like...
It went too far into detail. Yeah, at first I was like, okay, this guy and his experiences, and he's like chuckling and remembering the times he had, and then it was very...
It really went all over the place. But overall, I mean, I thought it was good. I mean, it's the agates that come out of Mexico are clearly amazing. You know, like think of like your lace agates, all these different names for Laguna lace agate and all this stuff. It's just not something that the average rockhound here in America gets to experience. These are all private property. Yeah. Like, it's not, you can't go do this. But you used to be able to go do it, or at the very least, like drive down and literally load up your truck and drive it back to America. Yeah. And that's just not, I don't know anybody that does stuff like that.
Well, this was the December issue, so we do have our Make It a Rockhounding Lapidary Christmas article, which was basically things that they've gotten from advertisers that they recommend you buy for people.
Yes.
Gift guide.
Any awesome gifts in it?
There's a couple interesting. There's two that I thought were interesting. A lot of like lapidary equipment that I didn't pay much attention to. I thought one. Some of it, like, clearly they just got, like, mailed it, and I don't know why they included it in their gift guide. One thing, they said a CB radio charm. I'm like, okay.
The image that they used for the article was a stocking with, like, stones attached to it.
Yes.
But I feel like they probably weren't attached. They were just like, it was flat. It was set flat. But I kind of like that idea. When I saw that, I was like, is this going to be like how to decorate a stocking with stones? Because that would actually be an interesting article, or an interesting, like, kind of crafty thing. Like, like a use for some of your polished stones. Like, make a fancy stocking.
Gift guide.
Yeah. Now, buy these things. Like, buy this... whatever, this wheel. I don't know. I've mixed feelings on like gift guides, because the modern version of that is people on YouTube doing it. So like December 1st rolls around, and YouTubers that whatever your niche is will be like, my top 5 picks for gifts for under $100 this season, and it's like your affiliate marketing, and that's a little bit like what they do here.
Yeah.
So.
I did like one of the gifts was called Rocks in Motion, a revolving display base that could hold up to 88 pounds, and it just slowly revolved. Mm-hmm. And you could see your rock, and it said it lasted 4 to 6 months on 2 D batteries.
Oh, D batteries.
I don't know, I thought that was kind of a neat idea. Certainly we have some rocks where, like, I don't know, the front, the back, which is the better side, and if you could see it all.
The one thing that we've seen advertised a lot that I kind of want, but I don't think exists anymore, is the magnifying rock aquarium.
You don't think that exists?
So it's basically just a little platform. You put a small rock on it, and you put a little glass globe over it, and the way the glass is cut, it just kind of magnifies what's inside it. And I thought that I've tried to find one. Maybe I'm not searching the right thing, but like if that existed, I would be like, oh, that's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah.
Like to take your small find and then put it in this thing, and then you can kind of see it from all angles.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of neat.
And we have some well, even when we're collecting, we're like, oh, this is neat, but it's so small. Like, what are you gonna do with it? It'd be nice to have some way to magnify it.
Yeah, I thought that would be kind of cool. I didn't really come away from the gift guide being like, this is the thing that is amazing. It was just like a list of products that you could buy. So that, there's that. There was one final article, and it was treating turquoise. Now, turquoise is something that I have started to learn more about. And so the article, treating turquoise, here's how low-grade turquoise is made high-grade. And one thing that kind of stood out to me, and it was they said that only about 10% of turquoise is usable in its natural state. About 90% of it is stuff that needs to be like treated, stabilized. And I actually contacted a source that I have who's by all accounts like an expert in the field and the world of turquoise. And I was like, what do you think about this 10%, 90% figure that I'm reading in 1976? And they said, today, it's about, out of all the stuff coming out of the ground, it's about 2%.
Wow.
About 2% is just good as is, can be worked and made into things untreated. This article kind of talks about the process of stabilizing using a vacuum and pressure and time to force different things into chalky turquoise to make it usable material.
Yeah.
And they definitely seem to like draw this distinction between like treated and stabilized.
Right. They're saying stabilized would be like basically adding plastic into it, where treated is like adding plastic and some like color enhancing something.
And then they also touched on some of the laws about it, about like what can be called turquoise, because you have if I have a t-shirt on that's turquoise in color, that doesn't make it turquoise. It's obviously a t-shirt and not a mined thing. So like, it reminds me a little bit of like champagne, right? Like, for something to be champagne, it needs to be from the Champagne region, So I didn't realize that there's kind of like laws pertaining to what turquoise can be called, but like
those laws still exist. I mean, they're saying it was only in New Mexico where this law existed, and it had like just passed, and it really didn't there was too many like loopholes, and it just wasn't really clear on it didn't really match the reality of like selling and mining turquoise.
Well, there's also the intention of the law, and then is it possibly even enforceable? And this is one of those things where it's like the intention is probably good, but it would be so hard. It's like a thought crime, right? Like if I sell you a piece of turquoise that I know is howlite, like a fake turquoise, somebody would have to prove that I knowingly knew that it wasn't real turquoise and it was howlite. So it's kind of like the only way it would be enforced would be to like insert yourself into the mind of an individual or get an admission.
But even then they were like, well, obviously selling a howlite as turquoise is not selling turquoise, but if you're selling turquoise that's been treated or stabilized, like when does it not become turquoise? And like the law said like, it has to be like natural or raw or some untreated, and they're like, well, untreated, does that mean unstabilized? And like it just wasn't. You can really find leeway in the terminology and be like, well, technically.
Yeah. And the article kind of read a little bit like an industry promotion thing, which it's not the worst, but not really. I didn't feel like it was very helpful. Obviously they don't give their secret recipe for how to take your chalky, low-grade turquoise and turn it into the high grade. They just kind of say that this is a thing that is happening, which, sure, I mean, I guess it's more like industry education, you know,
Yeah,
which I thought,
we're educating people on.
yeah. Cool.
Well, I know that's about it for this issue, but it looks like we're not done with turquoise because next episode we'll be looking at Rock and Gem January 1977, and the cover image is a bunch of jewelry made out of turquoise.
The 70s and 80s, we will have lots and lots of turquoise. We already have, and we're going to have even more.
We'll also learn about faceting made easy, lapidary and silversmith duet, winter rockhounding trips, jewelry of many horses, gemstone coat buttons, and how you can acid etch.
Is going to be jewelry made for horses, by horses, or of horses. Next time!